last but not least, section 6. This is a tough one for some students to wrap their heads around. It was a tough one for me to figure out the best way to introduce it. The concept for this one I want you to think about is to think of these two. Once we solve them, we're going to factor like we've done before with one quantity times another quantity. But we're dealing with greater than or less than. So we're dealing with negative numbers or positive numbers. So you've got to think quantity times quantity, not just what sets them equal to 0. That was easy. But now we have to think what would make them positive or what would make them 0. Remember, positive meaning greater than 0, less than, negative meaning less than 0. So the first one they give us is example 1, solve for x. So what I will do first, we treat it the same way we've been treating these problems. We break it apart and try to figure out what to do. We have a -4 and a +2. Well, I know if I were setting equal to 0, then here my x would be 4. That would be equal to 0. Here my x would be -2. That would be equal to 0. What I found that I think is the best method for students to grasp is I use two number lines, one on top of another, running parallel. So my first one is x equals 4. So we'll say here's 4. And then that's running down this way to 0. We know that everything over here is negative. Everything over here is positive. If it's 4, if the answer is 4, then we have equal to 0. Okay, now here we have -2. So if I plug a -2 in here, then what I'm dealing with is that's where my 0 would be, at -2. Then up here we're talking positive, positive, positive. You'll see how this lays out. Here's a negative. Here's if I'm at -2. Here is 4. Anything over 4, they're both, it's positive times a positive. Anything less than -2 is positive times a positive. Now, I'm dealing with a negative number, less than. Less than, so negative. Less than 0. I need these two multiplied together to be, where's my eraser? Here's my sock eraser. This is where I want us to think x, y. So this times this, has to equal a negative. Because a negative is less than or equal to 0. So that means my x minus 4 times my x plus 2 has to be negative. Negative is less than or equal to 0. Those two multiplied have to be negative. We know where they lie. We have a 4. We have a -2. Those are the numbers we're dealing with. But we need a negative. I know we're not talking, let me write it here. We're not talking less than -2 because they're both positive. So that's out. We are not talking greater than 4. We're not talking greater than 4 because those are positive. So what am I left with? I'm left with this area between the two. I have -2, my x is there, and then 4. So my x is greater than or equal to -2, less than or equal to 4. I don't know if that's the best. That's my favorite way to show it. I think it makes more sense to me to teach. Let's do another one. We're going to do 2. 3 is just kind of a trick. So we're going to go down here. Example 2. That's a 2. Solve for 6x squared minus x greater than or equal to 2. So 6x minus 2. I just moved my 2. So greater than or equal to. So let's see, I have a 3x, I need a negative 2, so I need a difference, but I need them to end up at 6. So if I plug a 2 and a 1, I'd have 6 and, or I need a 1. If I plugged a 2 and a 1, I would have my 6 and 2, so that's 4. So if I try a 2 and a 1 here, that would give me my 2. I would have a 3 and a 4. That's what I need. I need my bigger number to be negative. So again, some students are still talking about not enjoying the factoring method. So let's start off. I need my 3x. 3x minus 2 greater than or equal to 0. So there's one of my x values. And my other one is negative 1/2, 2x plus 1 greater than or equal to 0. Greater than or equal to 0, I need a positive answer. So I need this piece, we'll start up here, 2/3, we'll say that's there, 2/3. 2/3 is 0. That's what makes That's what makes 3x minus 2 equals 0. When I plug that in, I have 0. That means everything this way is negative. Moving this way is positive. Think number line. But instead of 0, we're replacing it with our answer, what equals 0 in our equation. So then this bottom one, negative 1/2, I'll put that over here. My negative 1/2, that is, I'll put this up here. That is 2x plus 1 equals 0. That's what that represents. That means everything here, everything to the left is negative, everything to the right is positive. Now, without even going back here, you can work with this number line and you know a lot. If I look at this piece here, everything to the left of negative 1/2 is a negative times a negative, which is positive. Anything in the middle here, I have a negative and a positive, so I have a negative. And anything to the right, they're both positive. They're both positive, so positive and a positive. That tells me it's not in the middle. So what happens is this greater than or equal to, I know that means positive. What makes it positive? Well, I know that x has to be less than or equal to negative 1/2, and I know that x has to be greater than or equal to 2/3 for this to be true. Look at this. Looks complicated, but it's not. If you focus on one thing at a time, focus on the first piece and say, okay, I can solve that. Set that equal to 0. That's positive 2/3. Easy, got it. Plug it in and make it represent 0 on a number line. Then you know everything to the left is negative, everything to the right is positive. Do the same for another one underneath, and then just look at it and say, what makes both of them multiply? Think of that, both of them multiplied together. This times this. This times this, positive. This times this, negative. This times this, positive. Then you just look for, what am I dealing with? Greater than or equal to 0. That's a positive. Where are they positive? They're positive here, they're positive here, not here. Up here was different. We needed negative. Well, over here was positive, over here was positive. Here we had a negative times a positive. There's my negative. My x is right in between them. Now, the other one that I said was kind of a trick. We'll go to example 3 real quickly. And I'll talk you through that one, and then chapter 7 will be done. All right, example 3 says solve x squared minus 6x, whoops, greater than 0. So what happens here, okay, if we factor this, we see that it's the same thing, x minus 3, x minus 3. We can replace that with x minus 3 greater than equal to 0. So here's the key. Greater than equal to 0. Whoops, squared, sorry. So what happens is I need to find out when, see what's going on? I need to find out when x minus 3 squared is positive. Remember, if we square something, it's positive. Doesn't matter if it's a negative number, we're squaring it. Anything squared is positive. Anything squared is greater than 0. So my answer, let me erase this. My answer for example 3 is all real numbers. Because I had the same thing. If you have the same thing, you square it. I only have one quantity squared. That means anything inside there will be positive. Isn't that awesome? And that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. That's the big concept for 7-6. Do your best with this one. Take your time and work one piece at a time, one step at a time. This is the big goal here. This is what we need to think. Keep thinking quantity times quantity. So you've got your same terms are always positive, anytime they're different negative, and then just go down the line and say what makes it true, what works. All right, I had a blast. I hope you did. Hope you found some joy in this. Maybe I'll see you again someday.